Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Welcome to another lecture. So in this class, we are going to continue with chapter 4 of class 8 alternative English, which is Bepin Choudhury's Lapse of Memory. Now, we had started reading about Bepin Choudhury, who had been living quite a comfortable life until one day he met Parimal Ghosh. This man, Parimal Ghosh, made him believe that he had been to Ranchi in the year 1958. Not only did he tell him about his visit to Ranchi in the year 1958, but he also mentioned a few intimate details, a few personal things about Bepin Choudhury, which were hard to believe for him because he had never seen that man, he did not know that man at all. Now, the man also mentioned Dinesh Mukherjee, one of Bepin Choudhury's friend who, according to him, was in Ranchi at the same time. Now, earlier, Bepin Choudhury seemed to have disregarded this entire conversation. But later, he just could not get his senses. He could not, understand what was going on with him. And therefore, he decided to call Dinesh Mukherjee in order to confirm whether what Parimal Ghosh was saying was true or not. To his surprise, Dinesh Mukherjee also confirmed the news. And now that there were two people who were speaking the same thing, Dinesh Mukherjee as well as Parimal Ghosh, so Bepin Babu was certainly in a fix. He did not know what to do. He did not understand anything at all. So now we are going to begin with the third part of this chapter and we'll read what happened with Bepin Babu later on. So after lunchtime, Bepin Babu realized that he could not possibly carry on sitting at his desk and working. This had never happened in the 25 years he had been with the firm. He had a reputation for being a tireless, conscientious worker, but today his head was in a whirl. So, after lunchtime, Bepin Babu just could not concentrate on his work. To sit in the office at his desk and to work was something which was totally impossible for him. This had never happened with him in the last 25 years, of his association with this firm. And he holds a reputation of being a tireless worker as well as a conscientious worker. That means somebody who never makes a mistake, somebody who's always correct. But today his head was a whirl. Today his head was not stable. Today he was not in his senses. He was confused. He was chaotic. Back home at 2:30, Bepin Babu lay down in bed and tried to gather his wits together. He knew that it was possible to lose one's memory through an injury in the head. But he did not know of a single instance of someone remembering everything except one particular incident, and a fairly recent and significant one at that. He had always wanted to go to Ranchi. To have gone there, done things and not to remember was something utterly impossible. So, Bepin Babu decided to come back home and he reached home by 2:30. When he lay down on his bed and he tried to gather his wits together. So, gather his wits together means he started thinking and rethinking about what was actually going on with him. He tried to, think about whether he actually had been to Ranchi or the other people were simply creating a story. He knew that it was possible to lose somebody's memory. If you have met with an accident on the head, there is some injury, you're bound to lose your memory. But he did not know anybody who could lose his memory and not lose his memory in particular, but somebody who remembers everything else about himself. Just one particular incident has been forgotten by him. And that too an incident which is as important as visiting a place. He always wanted to go to Ranchi, but imagining and believing that he went there, he did a lot of things there and he does not remember anything about it, was totally impossible. It was simply not believable for him. At 7:30, Bepin Babu's servant came and announced, "Chunni Babu, sir, says it's very important." So 7:30 in the evening, Bepin Babu's servant came to him and announced to him that Chunni Babu had come to meet him and he says it is very important. Bepin Babu knew that what Chunni had come for. Chunni Lal had been at school with him. He'd been having a rough time lately and had been coming to see him about a job. Bepin Babu knew it was not possible to do anything for him and in fact told him so. But Chunni kept turning up like a bad penny. So, Chunni Lal was Bepin Choudhury's school friend. They had been in school together. But lately, in the recent past, he is going through a very rough time. He is going through a very difficult time in his life. And he knows, Bepin Babu knew that Chunni Lal had come to him with a hope of getting a job. Now, Bepin Babu knew that it was not possible for him to do anything for him and he has told the same to Chunni Lal again and again. But Chunni Lal kept on turning up like a bad penny. Like a bad penny, something which is a very bad incident, a very bad circumstance, a very bad situation which keeps on revisiting you again and again. So that is exactly what Chunni Lal continued to do. Bepin Babu sent word that not only was it not possible for him to see Chunni now, but not in several weeks. So Chunni Lal, through his servant, Bepin Babu, through his servant, sent a message for Chunni Lal that not only today, but for the next several weeks, he would not be able to meet him. But as soon as the servant stepped out of the room, it struck Bepin Babu that Chunni might remember something about the 58 trip. There was no harm in asking him. So as soon as the servant stepped out of Bepin Babu's room, Bepin Babu realized that there was a slight possibility that Chunni Lal would remember something about his trip in the year 1958. So he thought that it was there was no harm in asking Chunni Lal. There would not be a problem if he would ask Chunni Lal about the same. Bepin Babu hurried down the stairs and into the living room. Chunni was about to leave, but seeing Bepin Babu appear, he turned round hopefully. So Bepin Babu hurried down. Very quickly he ran down the stairs. He went to the living room. Chunni Lal was about to leave when Bepin Babu came. And when Chunni Lal saw Bepin Babu, he became a little hopeful. He thought that maybe Bepin Babu would be able to help him. Bepin Babu did not beat about the bush. Beating about the bush, we all know, is a proverb which simply means to ask one thing, you ask multiple other things. So rather than coming on to the point, you first create a lot of story around it and then you talk about what you actually wanted. So Bepin Babu did not waste time in anything rubbish. He straightaway came to the point. He said, "Listen, Chunni, I want to ask you something. You have a good memory and you have been seeing me off and on for a long time. Just throw your mind back and tell me, did I go to Ranchi in 58? So Bepin Babu asked Chunni Lal that, "See, I want to ask you something. Your memory is very good and you keep on meeting me very frequently as well. So just throw your mind back. I want you to go into the past and tell me whether I went to Ranchi in the year 1958 or not. Chunni said, 58? It must have been 58, or was it 59? You sure that I did go to Ranchi? Chunni's look of amazement was not unmixed with worries. Do you mean you have doubts about having gone at all? Did I go? Do you remember clearly? So Chunnilal said 58. Was it 58 when you went to Ranchi, or was it the year 1959? So Bepin Babu asked him, are you sure that I went to Ranchi? The moment Bepin Babu asked this question from Chunnilal, he could see mixed expressions on Chunnilal's face. A, he was amazed, he was surprised, he was shocked. And B, he was worried about his friend. He was afraid that his friend had forgotten something so important. So this was not a good sign and he was not happy with it. Do you mean you have doubts about having gone at all? So Chunnilal asked him that, are you doubtful that you went to Ranchi? And Bepin Babu again asked him with a lot of emphasis that, do you remember clearly that I went to Ranchi in the year 1958? Chunni sat down on the sofa, fixed Bepin Babu with a long hard stare and said, Bepin, have you taken to drugs or something? As far as I know, you had a clean record where such things were concerned. I know that old friendships don't mean much to you, but at least you had a good memory. You can't really mean that you've forgotten about the Ranchi trip. So Chunnilal, he sat on the sofa and he started looking at Bepin Babu. So fixed him with a long hard stare means he started looking at Bepin Babu. And he asked him, he said to him that, have you started taking drugs or something? Because as far as I know you, you are a very clean person. You do not have any such record in, under your name. And although you do not remember your old friendships, but I believe your memory is quite good. And I don't think that you have forgotten about your Ranchi trip altogether. Bepin Babu had to turn away from Chunni's incredulous stares. Do you remember what my last job was? Asked Chunnilal. Of course, you worked in a travel agency. You remember that, and you don't remember that it was I who fixed up your railway booking for Ranchi. I went to the station to see you off. One of the fans in your compartment was not working. I got an electrician to fix it. Have you forgotten everything? Whatever is the matter with you, you don't look too well to me. So, Chunnilal asked, Bepin Babu, that, do you remember what was my last job? Now, when Bepin Babu got this confirmation from Chunnilal also that he'd been to Ranchi in 58, he actually had to turn away. He had to look away because Chunnilal was looking at him in an incredulous manner. Incredulous, doubtful. So Chunnilal could not understand how could Bepin Choudhury make such a mistake. So when he asked about his last job, Bepin Choudhury told him that it was of a travel agent. So Chunnilal told him that, if you remember what was my last job, how could you have forgotten that it was me who had fixed up the railway booking for you, for Ranchi? I went to the station to see you off, and one of the fans in your compartment was not working. So I got an electrician to fix it. Have you forgotten everything? And then he said to Bepin Choudhury that, whatever is the matter with you, I don't see, you looking in a good state. I think there's something wrong with you. Bepin Babu sighed and shook his head. I've been working too hard, he said at last. That must be the reason. Must see about consulting a specialist. Doubtless it was Bipin's condition which made Chunni Lal leave without mentioning anything about a job. So, Bipin Babu sighed and shook his head. Sighed, he took a deep breath. So he took a deep breath and he shook his head. He started shaking his head. He agreed with Chunni Lal and he said that I think I have been working very hard. That is the only reason I can possibly see for this. Must see about consulting a specialist. He said that I think I should consult a specialist for my problem. Now, obviously, it was because of Bipin's condition that Chunni Lal left that day without mentioning anything about his job. Paresh Chanda was a young physician with a pair of bright eyes and a sharp nose. He became thoughtful when he heard about Bipin Babu's symptoms. Look, Dr. Chanda, said Bipin Babu desperately, you must cure me of this horrible illness. I can't tell you how it's affecting my work. Dr. Chanda shook his head. So what was the name of the doctor whom Bepin Choudhury, decided to consult? So the name of that doctor was Dr. Chanda. He was a young physician. He had bright eyes. He had a sharp nose. And when Bipin Choudhury told him about his condition, he became quite thoughtful. So, he started thinking about all the symptoms and everything that Bipin Choudhury had told him. Bipin Choudhury told to Dr. Chanda in a very desperate manner, in a very excited in a manner because he was very irritated at the same time. So he said, look, Dr. Chanda, you have to cure me of whatever problem I have because it is affecting my work. And Dr. Chandas, just sat there shaking his head. So he was trying to understand what Bipin Babu's problem was. You know what, Mr. Choudhury, he said, I have never had to deal with a case such as yours. Frankly, this is quite outside my field of experience. But I have one suggestion. I don't know if it will work, but it's worth a try. It can do no harm. So, Dr. Chanda told to Bipin Babu that the kind of case you have, that is the strangest that I have ever heard in my career. I have never dealt with a case like yours, and my experience also has never been to deal with such a case. I have just one suggestion. I don't know how effective that suggestion would be, but I don't think there is a problem in trying. So Bipin Babu leaned forward anxiously. He bent forward and he started listening to what Dr. Chanda had to say very anxiously. Anxiously, very worriedly. So obviously he was worried. So with that worried expression, he started listening to what Dr. Chanda had to say. As far as I can make out, Dr. Chanda said, and I think you are of the same opinion. You must have been to Ranchi, but due to some unknown reason, the entire episode has slipped out of your mind. What I suggest is that you go to Ranchi once again. The sight of the place may remind you of your trip. This is not possible. This is not impossible. More than that, I cannot do at the moment. I am prescribing a nerve tonic and a tranquilizer. Sleep is essential or the symptoms will get more pronounced. So, Dr. Chanda told Bipin Choudhury that I think, and I am sure you would also agree with me, that you have been to Ranchi, but due to some reason which we do not know, you have forgotten about that episode entirely. So what I suggest to you is that you go to that place once again. Maybe when you see that place, maybe when you look at the surroundings, it would be easier for you to remember and recall what had happened. He said that this is the best thing that I can suggest you with. Other than that, I am prescribing a nerve tonic as well as a tranquilizer. So tranquilizer is a medicine that, relieves and reduces the stress that you have. So Dr. Chanda told Bepin Babu that if you'd sleep well, that is going to be better for your condition. Otherwise, your symptoms, your problem will get more pronounced. It will even increase further. Bepin Babu felt somewhat better the next morning. After breakfast, he rang up his office, gave some instructions and then procured a first-class ticket for Ranchi for the same evening. So what did Bepin Choudhury do the next day? He called up his office. He told them that he'd not be coming for a couple of days. He instructed whatever work was to be done in his absence. And then he got for himself a first-class ticket for Ranchi for that very evening. So, dear students, let us now see how much we've comprehended from the third part of the chapter. So, who was Chunni Lal? Chunni Lal was Bepin Choudhury's school friend. What did he want from Bepin Babu? He wanted a job and he wanted his help in getting one. Why was Dr. Chanda puzzled? What was unusual about Bepin Babu's loss of memory? So why was Dr. Chanda puzzled? Dr. Chanda was puzzled because he had never heard of the kind of problem that Bepin Choudhury was telling to him. And what was unusual about Bepin Choudhury's memory? It was unusual that he remembered everything else quite clearly. It was only about his visit to Ranchi that he had forgotten. So rest, everything was quite clear in his mind. Okay. Let us move on to the last part of the chapter and we'll figure out what actually the problem with Bepin Babu was. So getting off the train at Ranchi next morning, he realized at once that he'd never been there before. So he just got off the train next morning and the moment he stepped out on the station, he was sure that he had not been to Ranchi. He came out of the station, took a taxi and drove around the town for a while. He realized that the streets, the buildings, the hotels, the bazaars, the Moradabadi hill, with none of these had he the slightest acquaintance. Would a trip to Choudhury Falls help? He did not believe so, but at the same time he did not wish to leave with the feeling that he had not tried enough. So he arranged for a car and he left for Choudhury in the afternoon. So he came out of the station and he took a taxi for himself and he drove around the town for a while. So, he was just roaming around the town. He was trying to get to know the places, the shops, the bazaars, the hotels. But none of those things had the slightest acquaintance. No, similarity. He did not know anything about these places at all. So he could not identify these places. He then thought if he should visit the Choudhury Falls, if that would be helpful. Though he was sure that it would not be of any help, but still he thought that, now that he's come so far, he should not go back without trying. So he wanted to give his best shot and wanted to go back home satisfied that at least he tried. So he arranged a car for himself and he left for Choudhury in the afternoon. At 5 o'clock the same afternoon in Choudhury, two Gujarati gentlemen from a group of picnickers discovered Bepin Babu lying unconscious beside a boulder. When he came round, the first thing Bepin Babu said was, "I am finished. There's no hope left." So at 5 o'clock that afternoon, what happened? there were two picnickers. Now, who are picnickers? As the name suggests, picnickers are those people who go to some place for, picnic. So, there were two Gujarati people who were there, who had gone there for picnic, and they discovered that Bepin Choudhury was lying unconscious near a boulder. Boulder, a big rock. So he was lying unconscious near a big rock. When he came round means when he regained his consciousness, when he came back to his senses, Bepin Choudhury said that I am finished. There's no hope left. So he could not gather any evidence of him having visited Ranchi before. And he was sure that he is under a very big problem now. There was some very serious medical illness that he was dealing with, and that he does not have a way out of it. Next morning, Bepin Babu was back in Calcutta. He realized that there was truly no hope for him. Soon he would lose everything. His will to work, his confidence, his ability, his balance of mind. Was he going to end up in the asylum? Bepin Babu could not think anymore. So next morning he was back in Calcutta. And he realized that he does not have any hope of recovery now. He was sure that everything around him was going to come to an end very soon. His life, his willingness to work, his confidence, his balance of mind. And he thought that he was probably going to end up in an asylum. Asylum, a mental hospital. So he thought that he was probably going to go to a mental hospital and he did not feel like thinking about it further because it was quite a disturbing thought. Back home, he rang up Dr. Chanda and asked him to come over. Then, after a shower, he got into bed with an ice bag clamped on his head. Just then, the servant brought him a letter which someone had left in the letter box. A greenish envelope with his name in red ink on it. So when Bepin Choudhury came home, he called up Dr. Chanda and told him to come and visit him. He then took a shower, he got into his bed and he had an ice bag, clamped onto his head. Clamped onto his head, we've usually seen, ice bag or, a warm bag. These are the things that help you get rid of your pain. So whatever area is paining, you usually keep it on that area. Okay, so he had an ice bag. He put that ice bag on his head because his head was really churning. Then his servant came to him and brought him a letter which was there in a green envelope and with red ink his name was written on it. Above the name it said urgent and confidential. In spite of his condition, Bepin Babu had a feeling that he ought to go through the letter. He tore open the envelope and took out the letter. This is what he read. So, above his name on that envelope, it was written urgent and confidential. So, not only was reading it very urgent, but somebody considered it to be confidential also. Okay, so that person who had written the letter did not want anybody else but Bepin Babu to read that. Although Bepin Babu was not in a very good condition, he was not in a great state of mind, but he still wanted to read what was there in the letter. He tore open the letter, he just threw off the cover of that letter and he started reading what was there. Dear Bepin, I had no idea that affluence would bring about that kind of a change in you that it has done. Was it so difficult for you to help out an old friend down on his luck? I have no money, so my resources are limited. What I have is imagination, a part of which I used in retribution of your unfeeling behavior. Well, you'll be all right now. A novel I have written is being considered by a publisher. If he likes it enough, it will see me through the next few months. Yours, Chunnilal. So, that letter was written by Chunnilal to Bepin Babu. And what did Chunnilal write in his letter? He had written to Bepin Babu that he was very disappointed with him. So, as a friend, Chunnilal had expressed his disappointment at Bepin Choudhury. He wrote to him that I had no idea your affluence would bring about the kind of change in you that it has done. Affluence, the money, we can say. Okay. So Bipin Babu had written to, Chunnilal had written to Bipin Babu that I never thought that the moment you will get rich, you are going to become a changed person. He said that he is very disappointed with him over the fact that it was so difficult for Bipin Choudhury to help an old friend. He did not have a job, he did not have a money. But one thing that Chunnilal had was his imagination. And it was that imagination which he used to punish Bipin Babu for what he had done. In retribution of your unfeeling behavior means heartless, selfish. So Chunnilal told Bipin Babu that I decided to punish you for your heartless behavior, for your selfish behavior, and for that I used my imagination. So what did you infer from this? That whatever problem Bipin Choudhury was going through, the story whether he'd been to Ranchi or not was actually a story that was created by whom? By Chunnilal. Why? Because he wanted to punish Bipin Choudhury for not being a good friend to him. He continued telling him that you are going to be all right now. Now that I have told you there is nothing wrong with your memory, you are going to be perfectly fine. He said that I have written a novel and a publisher really liked it. So if the publisher decides to publish it, I think I will be able, see me through the next few months means I'll be able to survive myself in the next few months. That is, I'd get enough money that will take care of me for the next few months. Yours, Chunnilal. When Dr. Chanda came, Bipin Babu said, I am fine. It's all came back as soon as I got off train at Ranchi. So as soon as Dr. Chanda came to visit Bipin Babu, he lied to him. He told Dr. Chanda that he has regained his memory, that he remembers everything now. He lied to Dr. Chanda that the moment he took off, he came out of the train at Ranchi station, he remembered everything. A unique case, said Dr. Chanda. I shall certainly write about you in the medical journal. The reason why I sent for you, said Bipin Babu, is that I have a pain in the hip from a fall I had in Ranchi. If you could prescribe a painkiller. So Dr. Chanda was equally surprised when he heard that. He said to Bipin Babu that it indeed was a very strange case and he was going to record this case in the medical file, in the medical journal, so that the others can also refer to it. Bipin Babu said that the reason why I sent for you means the reason why I called you was because when in Ranchi I fell down and I have a pain in my hip. So I was just thinking if you could prescribe me a painkiller for that. So with this, my dear students, we come to the end of this story. Bipin Babu's loss of memory. As we've read, and one thing that we have learned from this story is a friend in need is a friend indeed, I would say. Chunni Lal cooked up this entire story just because he did not get from Bipin Choudhury the kind of selfless friendship that he was expecting, especially because he was going through such a difficult time. So he actually created this entire situation. First, he planted Parimal Ghosh at Kali Charan's, the bookstore in the New Market. Because he was so close to Bipin Babu, he knew that Bipin Babu would go to this bookstore only. So he had planted Parimal Ghosh there. Knowing Bipin Choudhury so well, Chunni Lal obviously had all the personal details about him. So Parimal Ghosh was told about the same. So Parimal Ghosh told Bipin Babu about his family, his wife, his brother, about his habit of carrying a bag with books whenever he would go for sightseeing. He mentioned about his Ranchi visit specifically because he wanted to worry Bipin Babu. This was just a way for him to take his revenge. So initially Bipin Babu was not very much affected by what Parimal Ghosh had said, but he still decided to confirm it. There were just two ways. One was to write and wait for a reply from Haridas Bagchi. Haridas Bagchi was his friend with whom he had actually spent the October of 1958 in Kanpur. But Haridas Bagchi had shifted to Japan just a few weeks ago, and Bipin Choudhury did not have his address of Japan. So that possibility was ruled out. The second option that Bipin Choudhury had was to meet or to ask and confirm from Dinesh Mukherjee. Now, Dinesh Mukherjee was very good at making fun of Bipin Choudhury. So, Bipin Choudhury did not feel like visiting him personally and confirming the same. He thought he would just call and confirm it over the phone. He called Dinesh Mukherjee, and Dinesh Mukherjee confirmed to him that both of them were in Ranchi in the year 1958 in the month of October. It was then when Bipin Choudhury actually became a little, hopeless, and he thought that there was something wrong with him indeed. He came back home and he was visited by Chunni Lal. We have been told that Chunni Lal was his school friend and was going through a very difficult time presently, and would come to Bipin Choudhury again and again with a hope that he might help him get a job. So initially, Bipin Babu just sent him a message through his servant that he was not there. But then he thought that maybe Chunni Lal would have some details about that visit to Ranchi in the year 58. So Bipin Choudhury thought of confirming it from him. When he asked Chunni Lal also confirmed and was rather surprised that he had forgotten something as big as his visit to Ranchi. He also reminded Bipin Choudhury that it was Chunni Lal only who had made his bookings for the Ranchi trip. He had come to drop him off at the station, and the fan of his compartment was not working, so he got an electrician to repair it. He suggested that Bipin Choudhury should consult a specialist. So Bipin Choudhury went to Dr. Chanda, who was a young physician, and Dr. Chanda was equally surprised when he heard the details of Bipin Choudhury's case. He had never heard such a case in his life. So he thought that just one suggestion he had for Bipin Choudhury, and that was that he should go back to Ranchi, and maybe if he goes back there, he visits those places once again, he might be able to remember and recall about the time he spent there. So Bipin Choudhury did as was advised, but unfortunately he did not remember anything. In fact, when he went to Choudhury Falls, he fell down and he got fainted. He came back the very next morning. He was now sure that he was going through a very serious medical illness and that his entire life was going to come to an end. He had no hopes left for himself. But then he got a letter which was written to him by his dear friend Chunni Lal. In that letter, Chunni Lal had confessed that it was him who had concocted the entire story. It was him who had set up all the people who had created the entire circumstance in such a manner that Bepin Choudhury would be forced to believe that there is some problem with his memory. And the only reason why he did so was because he was very annoyed and he was very disappointed with the kind of friend Bepin Choudhury was. And he wanted to punish him for that. When Bepin Choudhury read that letter, he realized there was no problem with him being, ill. So when Dr. Chanda came to see him, he simply told him about the pain he had in his hip and that he wanted some painkillers to be prescribed to him for that. So my dear students, I hope you enjoyed this story and you learned that it is very important for us to help our friends as dearly as we can. Okay, let us discuss the back exercises now. Had Bipin Babu lost his memory and forgotten all about his trip to Ranchi? So no, it was at the end of the story that we got to know that Bipin Babu had never been to Ranchi in the first place. So he did not forget about anything, he did not lose his memory, it was only something which his friend Chunni Lal had done to punish him. Why do you think Chunni Lal did what he did? Chunni Lal says he has no money. What is that he does have? So why did Chunni Lal did what he did? As I told you, he wanted to punish Bepin Choudhury for not being a good friend, for not having helped him when he needed his help the most. And what was it that Chunni Lal had? Chunni Lal had his imagination. Okay? All right. The author describes Bepin Babu as a serious and hard-working man. What evidence can you find in the story to support this? So he has described Chunni Lal as a serious and a hard-working man. He was serious because we have been told, we have words like he was a non-mixer. He did not have any friends. Then he did not like to waste time in idle chats. Rather, he loved to read and could read 5 novels in a 5 books in a week. So that quite clearly show that he was a very serious and a hard-working kind of a man. Why did Bipin Babu change his mind about meeting Chunni Lal and what was the result of this meeting? So why did Bipin Babu change his mind? He changed his mind because he thought that that Chunni Lal was a close friend and that confirming something like this from Chunni Lal should not be a problem, because unlike Dinesh Mukherjee, he knew that Chunni Lal would not mock at him or make fun of him. And what was the result of this meeting? The result of this meeting was that Bepin Choudhury was confirmed, was sure that there was some problem he was going through at that time and that he had to consult a specialist for the same. Bipin Babu lost consciousness at Choudhury Falls. What do you think was the reason for it? So why do you think Bipin Babu lost consciousness? Because of the stress. Because of his mind being not stable. Because of overthinking. So ever since he met Parimal Ghosh, this thought of this question whether he had been to Ranchi or not had never left his mind. And therefore, he was in a deep stress. He continued to think and rethink the entire day. And that was the reason why he fainted. How do you think Bipin Babu reacted when he found out what that Chunni Lal had tricked him? So how do you think Bipin Babu reacted? Bipin Babu obviously understood his mistake. He realized that he should have helped Chunni Lal. And that is why, in order to cover the same, when Dr. Chanda came, he accepted that his memory was now back, that he has remembered everything, and the only reason he called Dr. Chanda was to give him the painkiller for the pain in his head. So with this, my dear students, we come to the end of this story. I hope you've understood the story very well, because every stanza, every line, every word has been explained to you well. The back exercises are also discussed with you at length. So I shall see you all now in my next lecture.